I'm gonna share my secrets for Flowy Ice Dye. I spent weeks perfecting the process, even though there are people out there in Facebook groups and forums telling us exactly how they're doing it with all the details. It is still hard to recreate because you have to experiment, and it took me a little while. So Flowy Ice Dye with thin t-shirt material, it's difficult because it wants to like crinkle up really small, and the small details in that crinkle, that's the scale of the detail you're going to get in the dye. And a lot of people are dissatisfied with that. It looks cool, it's just not the long flowy dye look that many of us are after. But I did realize after dyeing some very thick and stiff sweatshirts that those sweatshirts did really well with Flowy Ice Dye, with like tall, deep scrunches, as people refer to them. So I'm like, how can I repeat that on some shirts? So I've been experimenting with ways to create the tall, deep scrunch on thin fabrics. And for a while I was experimenting with Legos, like holding up the fabric like this with different shapes. That got closer. This gives you really good results, and it's nice because you can build different shapes. So I'll still be utilizing this. If you plan on repurposing Legos like this, obviously don't give this back to a kid. Don't donate this. I hesitate to even show you this because we probably shouldn't be risking a toddler sucking on this after you've used it for dye. So just be careful. My kids are all above the age of using these items, so I stole them. So anyway, I still use these a lot with tie-dye setups, you know, setting things up on a rack to ice dye. Very helpful. I don't know if I've seen a lot of people using Legos, or what are these called? Mega Blocks. The next thing I tried was, let's fold two things together. So a cotton shirt folded in like on top of the thick sweatshirt, and that worked pretty well. The only downside to that was the t-shirt looked good, the sweatshirt looked good, except the sleeves were much darker than the body because the t-shirt had soaked up a lot of the dye but didn't cover the sleeves. So that's less than ideal. So I'm like, well, maybe I can use a different fabric, like a towel. I used a cotton towel folded into the shirt. The problem with that was the cotton towel was so absorbent, it just sucked the dye straight through the t-shirt material, and there was no flow whatsoever. It was just like little points, and I was like, that's not cool. So I'm like, okay, I need a thick fabric material that is not absorbent. Okay, let's try polyester fleece, and that worked. So I'm going to show you that process. I have an order for a sweatshirt to be beach colored themed, and the colors that I used for that previously were indigo blue, lavender, wasabi, and amber waves. That looked really great. I think the only color I was iffy on was lavender because that has a bit of red in it, and the red just likes to react on the surface and not move. So I don't like how that looks a bit like just red spots rather than defined flowy detail. But you know, like overall visually it looks nice, so I just won't use a ton of lavender, but I will use a lot of indigo, wasabi, and amber waves. I need to wipe off my surface because I'm going to use that to pre-fold this before I stick it in the basket. So this one is not going to have the polyester fleece folded into it. This is just I'm just going to demonstrate how I put this in the basket for the purpose of really beautiful flowy ice dye. This video is getting long, but I don't know that I've ever done like such a chatty, uncensored video. For the sake of science, we'll post it. It is 11 o'clock at night, so this might also be hindering my discretion. So let me put on my gloves because I did pre-soak these items and I don't want to be touching them with bare skin. It just feels gross and I'm pretty sure it's not good for your skin. It was pre-soaked and then spun out. So over here I've got my little like spin dryer thing. Very convenient for saving soda ash water and reusing it. Okay, can we see what's happening here? I'm ready to like get my face closer. There we go, that's better. Okay, so I'm like grabbing a section, making it tall. Then I'm gonna do that again. Just like that. And then I'll just keep doing that until the whole thing looks like it has even heights of scrunched sections like that. And try to make it as random as possible. That always looks better than perfect rows. There are so many variables to getting good flowy ice dye that you can do the right folding, but then mess up something about the dye, and then you don't know what the actual problem was, so it takes a long time to figure that out for yourself. Even though, like, I knew what other people were doing because they would write it out, they tell you what they're doing. Sometimes you just can't figure out what you're doing wrong. So I got really lucky that I just had a bunch of shirt blanks sitting around, and then I just decided I was gonna keep trying until I got it. But not everybody has a bunch of shirts sitting around that they can just play with because that can get expensive. So yeah, I get it that it's frustrating to have to figure those things out. Okay, so I've got the body scrunched. I'm gonna kind of have the arms go up here, hopefully. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, looks pretty good and random. I'm gonna try to stick this in here without it completely falling apart. No, it's good if it can stay nice and loose in there. So I love these bins that I got from Meijer because the size of them is just kind of perfect. A smaller container would scrunch it really tight, and I don't think that looks the best. Okay, I'm editing this video, so I've seen the whole process now and the results, and I just want to say, scrunching it tighter might have avoided some of the rogue blue spots that you'll see later. Maybe. But, you always gotta just try things and see how it goes. Actually, I think I'm gonna fold the t-shirt before I move on so you can see the difference in the sweatshirt and the t-shirt strategy. Here is where the magic is happening. This is my fleece from the local craft store, Joann's. I found it in the discount section, so it was pretty cheap. I think I got 2 yards of it, and I was able to cut it into 4 sections, maybe. So I'm just gonna lay the shirt out on top of this, and you want the fleece to be as big as the shirt, so that you can just lay the shirt out flat. Unfortunately, the bigger sizes here don't fit on what I cut, but you could just cut your fabric bigger. I didn't think about that when I was cutting them. Now I'm going to do the same thing that I just did with the sweatshirt, but on this, doing the tall, deep scrunches with the shirt and the fleece together. The fleece is going to provide the thickness and the structure that the sweatshirt has, and because it's not absorbent, it is going to slightly repel the dye and the moisture so that it will flow through the cotton t-shirt fabric instead of just going straight down through the fleece. hopefully. That's how it has worked so far, and I think that's why it has looked so good. And the results are very smooth and buttery, not jagged. So when I was experimenting with using Legos to hold the thin fabric up in tall, deep scrunches, this made for sharp, jagged details. Very cool, but not the effect that I was going for. Alright, just make sure I didn't have dye on my hands. Try this again. So we're gonna go for scrunches here. So I'm taking portions that are about as big as what I did with the sweatshirt. You can just grab a section, pull it up, smush it together. Hopefully what you're seeing visually will fill in all the details you need, because verbally I feel like I'm not doing a great job this evening. I feel like those sections at the bottom got a little bigger than the top, but sometimes variation is nice. And then you're just gonna like scrunch the excess fleece around it. Not a problem to have excess fleece around, because I actually think it's nice to have it holding ice around the shirt so that the shirt gets fully saturated. Sometimes when the shirt is right on the edge of where the dye and the ice is applied, it doesn't run through the very edge as much as it does in the middle. So I think it does look nicer when you have a little bit of a margin around the shirt. This gets a little trickier to wrangle this in the bin. You know, you might decide that you would rather fold it in the bin than do this, but ooh. There we go. Not too bad. Not too bad there. Now I'm just kind of like trying to keep it from being too squished and tight in there. Alright, so that's what that looks like. Tall, deep scrunches on a thin t-shirt fabric. And now those details should look nice and smooth because the fleece underneath is providing a soft structure, not hard with edges. And there's not much creasing. It's not being like wrinkled onto itself. So, yeah, the fleece is just acting as a moisture repellent, gentle, soft filler. Okay, a lot of adjectives there. Now let's set up the rack. And 2 cookie cooling racks to hold up these bins. Alright, are we going to be able to see what's happening here? Meh. So this is how I do this. I just haven't mentioned yet that I think an incline is important. So after I get the ice and the dye on there, sometimes I'll use some Mega Blocks to further increase the dramatic incline. As you can see there, that gets a pretty nice incline. Maybe we're approaching 45 degrees. I'm putting the ice on first and then the dye on top. And I'm going to put my mask on so I'm not going to be chatting anymore. Which is good because I'm getting less articulate as this goes on. Okay. I added all the ice that my ice maker had made, and then I ended up doing horizontal stripes of color, and I wish that I had done vertical stripes. I think I'm starting to see better results with vertical in relation to the incline, and I kind of wish that I had used more dye than this. So just as you're watching this, keep that in mind. Based on the results, I wish that I had used more dye and done the stripes up and down. It's the next day, and it is time to rinse out the sweatshirt and the t-shirt. Let me just show you real quick. This is what I'm going for. I dyed this shirt the same way that I demonstrated for this video. This is what I'm going for. I love these details, the flowiness. So this is my vision. This is what is possible. If these don't turn out this well, then, you know, that just happens. Some are good, some are bad. That's the randomness and that's what keeps us hooked on tie-dye, because you never know what you're gonna get, right? So let's go do that. It's been about 20 hours. I think that's enough time for the dye to set. This is what it looks like after the dye in the ice has melted. So this is the t-shirt, this is the sweatshirt. The sweatshirt is inside out and the inside has polyester in it, so that's why it looks more like muted. And this is just 100% cotton, so that looks bright. Okay, here we go. All right, I guess I'll have to finish rinsing it, but at first glance, I don't love the way the bottom looks, but we'll see. It usually changes a little bit as you rinse it. I just pulled both items out of the dryer and I forgot a few things. It's been a couple weeks since I've dyed anything, and when it comes to dye placement, it's really important to have the placement good too. Indigo blue is amazing for having nice details. Other colors like amber waves and wasabi can sometimes just look like a blob without any detail, and that's not what you want. That doesn't mean you can't use those colors, but you have to layer in other colors that do produce fine details like indigo blue and some blacks, and there are a few other colors, but you got to use both, and I didn't layer in the detail colors properly. But anyway, I'm gonna go show you the sweatshirt and the t-shirt. I still think they look really cool. I am just like the biggest critic because I'm staring at it all the time, you know? All right, here's the sweatshirt, and here's what I mean by indigo blue being really great for detail. You can see this area looks nice. So the sleeves are pretty much just indigo blue, so I think those look really cool. And the rest of it also looks nice. I really love these areas where there's like darker edges, but I don't know what to call those areas. I do like the back better than the front. Some nice detail happening there. This is how the shirt turned out. And I want to make a note about color placement. So here, the colors were placed horizontally in stripes. I think it's best to have stripes up and down of color. So say you'd have like wasabi and then amber waves, and then add in indigo blue like throughout the whole thing to add detail. Because I think what happened here is the blue kind of like reached down and kind of just became spots rather than being flowy. So who knows, you know, it could be random. You could do this 5 more times and some of them would be amazing and some of them wouldn't. But I wish I had added more indigo blue here so that we could have some detail, because this area doesn't have a lot of detail. Let me know what questions you have based on this, and I'll make another video where I try to pay more attention to color placement so we can get some really awesome results.